Founder's Fuel, it's never been made before. There's nothing like it. And it's just those four ingredients, but it's the dosing that's in each bottle it's perfected for your chemistry.
I'm ready to bounce out of bed, start the day. I'll smash the gym. I'll come home. I'll start work, and I'm able to maintain that energy throughout the day. Then at night, I'm able to just unwind and go to sleep, and then just sleep hard.
It's designed in a way that your body's not going to develop a dependency on it. You're not going to have an oversaturation of certain receptors in the brain, so it's not pulling from one area to feed another.
You just don't take it and assume all your wishes are going to come true. You got to be able to pay attention to some of those other things as well. But when you do have that dialed in, and then when you put Founder's Fuel inside of that routine, it will change people's lives in the way that they work unlike anything else they've ever had.
All right, everybody, here's your Ageless Future today. And I've got my friend Charlie Gaudet. He's a repeat offender on the show. We got him back today because I wanted to talk about a really exciting opportunity called Founder's Fuel. And he and I are going to talk about the journey that it took to create this formula for crazy entrepreneurs like Charlie, like myself, like you, more than likely, and how it can help you focus, find a better clarity, and also help you stay relaxed so that you're not continuously feeling like you're running behind. And so, Charlie, so glad to have you back here on the show.
No, it's an honor to be here. Thank you for having me.
So this has been a journey. You and I have been working together almost 3 years now, maybe, yeah, about 3 years.
At least.
And your health transformation's just nothing short of jaw-dropping. I mean, and the cool thing about it is it's like compounding, because every time I see you, you look better, more muscular. You're just like, your fitness levels are through the roof. The dudes at the gym can't compete. What are the young guys saying about you now?
Well, it's funny. The owner of the gym came to me one day and he said, "Hey, what are you doing?" I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "At your age," I'm 47 years old, right? He says, "At your age, you shouldn't be experiencing the transformation that you're going through, everything from physical transformation at the pace that I'm going through this physical transformation, as well as the strength. I mean, it's not uncommon for me to be the strongest one in the class. It's not uncommon for me to finish first, and everybody else in the class is, they're 20s, they're in their 30s, they're all very fit, and I'm the old guy. I'm the gray-haired dude, right?" And so, from there, he's like, it's not very common. So he picked up on it. And one of the most common, you introduced the show as Ageless Future. I think one of the funny things is when people see me after having not seen me for many, many months or even years for that matter, the number one thing that they all come back and say is, "Oh my God, man, like, what are you doing? You look so much younger."
Yeah.
And that in and of itself is a testament to the work that we've done together. It's pretty remarkable. I feel better too. I'm almost embarrassed, my press releases and the different media shots. I'm embarrassed when they use older photos, because I'm like, "No, that's not me. That's not me." Most people are like, "Yeah, use the young photos of me." I'm like, no, don't use those. Use my current photos of me.
Yeah. Well, you and I feel the same. I mean, it's funny because once you really get health dialed in, there's no telling what things will be like 10 years from now, 20 years from now. And so today is a great day to start. And we'll provide some images for those of you who watch this on YouTube, so you can see, Charlie's big transformation. He's got abs, he's looking all sexy, and he's all, so he's always been competitive. So I'm not surprised in the gym that you're now like, "All right, let's go, boys. It's time."
Well, it's funny. You and I have worked together long enough to know that, I have two speeds. I'm either all in or I'm out, right? And so, that all in, it's, look, if you're going to do anything, you might as well do it right. I think that's also, what brought us all to Founders Fuel as well, because when you and I spoke, I joked, but it was only half joking when I said, "Regan, make me superhuman."
Yeah.
Right?
That was
Anyway,
your first request. I was like, easy. We can guarantee it.
right. Well, but one of the things I want to give you credit for is that I've worked with so many people over the years, and when I've asked them to help me advance both my mind and my body and the whole deal, they said yes, but the way of holding themselves accountable was, hey, so how do you feel right now? Right. And they would just look at some imagery, say, okay, this is what you look like, and this is what you look like now. But it's like, how do you feel? For you, it was different. For you, we got this blood work done. And in and of itself, when I went to get the blood work done over at LabCorp, the technician said, wow, I've never had blood work this comprehensive. And I thought that was telling, right? And then anytime we made a serious change, you said, all right, you know what? This is a pretty big change. Let's get your blood work done in another couple months because we just want to make sure and track what's going on. So your level of accountability is different. Really doesn't matter how I feel. In some cases, you've warned me and you said, this is going to make you feel worse for a little bit. You're going to feel worse before you get better. And you can expect that. So if I was going through another, traditional expert, they would have said, how are you feeling? I don't know that they would have been courageous enough to take me down the path where I'd feel worse for a period of time before I got better.
Yeah.
But we could see through the biomarkers and whatnot that things were getting better. I mean, I don't remember, you might be able to recall when we did a test on my aging and the biomarkers there. I think we've now brought me to a point where my biological age is half as fast as, I'm not even sure if I'm saying it right, as my chronological age. So I'm aging 50% slower than my chronological age.
Yeah. Yeah. You're well under a decade. You're about 12 years younger biologically than you are chronologically. And
Yeah.
and that's pretty exciting. And
Well, there are some parts of me, and I don't know, this is G rated, so I'll just leave it at that. But there are some parts of me that are far more than 12 years. I feel like I'm still a high schooler for, some parts of this, but,
that is true.
uh,
We'll just say the sexual organs have become some of the youngest in Charlie. He's
you know what? And it's interesting because my peers are facing other issues, right?
Mhm.
My peers are becoming, less, sexually active and, it's just, and they're
Beatles
just
gone.
attributing it to just age. And, there's so much of it more than just what you would think. For me, it's all about vitality. Like I wake up and I have energy. The way I look at it is I'm like, well, if I happen to wake up anytime after 4 a.m., then I'm just going to stay awake because I'm awake, like not awake, like I'm ready to bounce out of bed, start the day. I'll smash the gym. I'll come home. I'll start work, and I'm able to maintain that energy throughout the day. And then at night, and didn't happen just like this. I mean, we worked to fine tune a program, but then at night, I'm able to just unwind and go to sleep and then just sleep hard. I mean, there could be a nuclear war outdoors, and that's not going to wake me up. Like I will sleep hard, and then I'll get up, and then I'm just ready to go. The version of me today feels better than the version of me when I was in my 20s, right? And so there's a lot of it that were just problems that I caused myself that I didn't realize. I figured, I'm having dinner with my wife. I'm going to have a couple glasses of wine and no harm, no foul. I mean, red wine, it should be fine, right? But then what that did to my sleep, caused an issue. I run 3 companies, right? So there's a lot of stress that comes with those companies. But managing my stress was something that I didn't know how to do other than just, have a nightcap at the end of the night, and that wasn't necessarily doing the best thing for me long term. I never prioritized my sleep. You probably remember my story when I was in my 20s. I created my first multi-million-dollar business, and my dad always told me that the early bird gets a worm, and he also said hard work is the secret of success, right? And
Yeah.
so, like I said, I have one speed. It's either all in or I don't do it. So somebody tells me hard work is the secret of success and the early bird gets a worm. Well, I'd set my alarm for 3:30 in the morning so I wouldn't quote unquote oversleep. I would work every waking hour of every day, 7 days a week. If I woke up at 12:30 at night to go to the bathroom, I would just say, well, I'm up. I'm going to start working again because I thought sleep was actually holding me back, not advancing me forward.
Right.
And that worked for a while until I ended up in the emergency room. My organs were shutting down. The doctor told me I was dying. Right. So it worked until it didn't work. But that's not my lifestyle and overall happiness and my health. And there was they did, I don't know if it's an ultrasound or something like that on my stomach, and they found that I had kidney stones in there. I mean, there's a whole bunch of things that in my early 20s, when I should have been at peak health and vitality, I wasn't, right? I prioritized a different lifestyle. I prioritized a busy executive push, make money lifestyle, thinking that that was going to help me lead to success. But it worked, and then it started really working against me.
Yeah.
Um,
Right. And I think that's one of the interesting things in working with you and other founders, other entrepreneurs, and Charlie runs a company called Predictable Profits, and so he's great at helping you prioritize the things that you need to prioritize so you don't end up in the hospital. I wanted to grow faster, and he's like, yeah, put on the brakes. Let's get things fixed first. And I think it was interesting because when I was trying to help Charlie unwind, I was like, all right, so there's this beautiful, there's some plant medicines, and this is not psychedelic medicines that I'm referring to, but there's some traditional medicine that can help relax you at night. And so I talked to him about kava, I talked to him about kratom, and he tried it and he said, I feel really good. And I said, all
Amazing.
right, good. Well, let's try it a little earlier in the day where you can get in the pocket, but you don't burn yourself out, where your brain, because my biggest concern is you are dopamine dominant. Like you love that reward system and you want to accomplish things. You've trained your brain to take on challenges. And so you've got a brain that has your capacity to push through and sacrifice it's a superpower, but it's also your kryptonite.
Yeah.
And so I said, well, what can we do to mellow this out? And once you got turned on to the kratom and kava, it was a game changer for you because you said you can relax. And then I said, all right, well, we got to bring in L-theanine so that your brain actually has a reset mode and where you can sleep at night. And
Yeah.
then we need lion's mane so it protects it, because I know a lot of you are like, well, kratom is addictive. And what are you doing, Reagan? Well, kratom is actually anything's addictive, just for the record. But
Yeah. It was
it's
caffeine,
yeah, caffeine is.
right?
Yeah, I dare some of you to try going off of it and see if you are addicted or not. See if there's dependency. And so with anything, it's the balance that's the most important thing. It's like, let's not throw out the baby with the bathwater. And so this is where I said, hey, let's bring in these other agents, and then just take the weekend off so your receptors get reset. And it was that was probably the biggest breakthrough from a cognitive perspective, I would say, with you.
Yeah. Well, I'd say for sure. As a kid, they want to put me on a bunch of different things, right? Not only as a kid. I mean, as an adult too. I mean, first they put me on Ritalin, and I hated Ritalin. Hated it. I mean,
How
I'm,
old were you?
I actually they waited until after high school before they put me on Ritalin. So right in college is when they put me on that.
Okay.
It's funny. They put me on Ritalin, and my friends actually spoke to me because they thought I was doing something else. I was on some sort of other drug because I almost looked a bit like a zombie. And
Mm,
I'm I'm this hyperactive, dude. Maybe that's why you and I are such good friends too, because we both have just like this certain amount of energy, right?
yeah.
But I'm this hyperactive dude. You put me on Ritalin, and all of a sudden, like I'm no longer hyperactive. Here's the thing. I've never in my entire life met a depressed, hyperactive person. It's really hard to be depressed when you're bouncing off the walls, right?
Good
So
point.
you put me on Ritalin, you take my energy down, and then I started getting really depressed. And so I didn't like that. So I got off. And they go, oh, that's because we got to put you on Adderall instead. So they put me on Adderall, and I was on that for maybe a year and a half here and there, but I hated it. But I felt like it was the only way I could actually get through my schoolwork until I started experimenting with nutrition and sleep and different things. And I realized, well, wait a minute. When I'm having high sugar and complex carbs, I tend to be far more ADHD than when my diet is clean. And, when I sleep better, I tend to be a little bit more focused. So I managed to get myself off of that. But even still, trying to sit down as clean as my diet is now, um, I still, I was diagnosed as a kid as having one of the worst cases of learning disabilities that the doctor had ever seen. The doctor looked at my mother, and I still can't believe this was said in front of me, but the doctor said, I'm surprised he's able to function at a regular school. Um, that's a whole different, conversation for a different day, because what that did for me as a kid, instantly, like I felt dumb, right? I felt like there was a big issue. And fortunately, my mom, and I don't know if this is true. I'm never going to ask her if this actually is the truth, because I don't want to know the truth, but it's the story that I've carried. Is my mom actually said to me, well, you didn't hear the whole story. And I said, what do you mean? She said, well, you also have one of the highest IQs that she's ever seen before, which is why you're able to do the things that you do that other people can't do, why you're able to go through school. I never could learn in school. I showed up physically, but then I'd have to come home and teach myself anything that I learned in school. I couldn't learn in class.
Mm.
And so you're right. I guess she was right. I couldn't function at a regular school, but I had to learn everything outside of school and then take my tests. So all that being said, like for me, especially, running these companies and having a lot of people and, I work with some of the smartest people in the world, right? Being able to be with these folks and function, I needed to find a way to harness my unique abilities and do it in a way where I didn't squish my energy. And some of the things that I had, some of the supplementation made me feel like I was much more tongue tied, right? And that was a problem, right? I just felt like I couldn't get the words out. Others, made me really jittery, and that became a big problem, right? So we worked together for a while and just creating this different formulation. And even the first one that we came up with, just the kava and the kratom, the lion's mane and the L-theanine, like it took a year to actually really, really, really dial it in, because it wasn't even just that. Then it had to go, okay, now we have the ingredients, but we need to manufacture this in a certain way that, pulls the stuff that we don't need out, puts the stuff that we do need in, so that we get maximum efficacy, if I said the right word right. If I said the word right, right? So we just get, so it's maximum, right? So it's like to do all that and which filters to use. I mean, I do remember right before, a mentor of mine back in the day said, you'll be the closest you've ever been to breakthrough success when you want to give up and quit more than anything else. And I remember it was the day before the final formulation where you said, I think this is about as far as we're going to get. I don't even know if we're going to get that much further. We might just have to throw in the towel on this one. Like, I think this is it. And then sure enough, like we had one more, and that last one, it was like, boom.
Finally. Yep.
I mean, was that a grueling process?
Yeah, and the thing that that we kept looking, because experimenting with Charlie and realizing I work with hundreds of entrepreneurs very similar, who we have the shiny object syndrome, and so we can get pulled off our focus because there's so many opportunities right now. But the biggest thing that founders can do is stay decisive and stay on the course that you set out to take in the first place. Yes, you're going to have pivots, but you're not being pulled away from your overall mission. And once I saw Charlie's breakthrough, and then Charlie is like, hey, let's we need to start sharing this with other founders. And so
Yeah.
he's working with all these entrepreneurs and saying, hey, try this formulation that I'm on. It seems to work really well, and they loved it, and they're like, where can I get more? And then we realized like we just need to create this at our own level where it's in a single serving, where it's easy for us to distribute, and we're right on the right
Yep.
at the,
There we
the
go.
finish line here. There's the Founders Fuel, and so Founders Fuel is it's never been made before. There's nothing like it, and it's just those four ingredients, but it's the dosing that's in the each bottle that's just it's perfected for your chemistry.
Yeah.
It's designed in a way that your body's not going to develop a dependency on it. You're not going to have an oversaturation of certain receptors in the brain, so it's not pulling from one area to feed another. Like that's why you felt so crappy on Adderall. Is it's like, yeah, I can actually focus when I'm in school and get the work done and learn a little bit, but I'm not learning in a way that's interesting to me whatsoever because
Yeah.
you're basically depleting nutrients in one part of your brain just so you can have the ability to get little bits of dopamine, little drips of it instead of big bursts of it. And so, and it's a stimulant. So you realize there's diminishing returns. You don't sleep as well. Your nervous system's amped up. You just don't feel as happy. And that's what I hear from so many clients. And now that we've got Founders Fuel, it's like, wow, maybe there's a way that we can supply the brain with what it needs without compromising future health. And so tell me what your experience is now that if you go back and it's been over a year now, I mean, which is crazy
Yeah.
that we started working on this project together. Charlie and I, we just made it our mission. We said we want to help entrepreneurs excel in what they do because we think entrepreneurs are the people that make the biggest change on the planet and have the biggest impact. But we want them to be able to do that without ending up like Charlie in the hospital or ending up like many of us. Like I burned like my first relationship, I was divorced my first wife because I was working nonstop. I didn't have an off button either,
Yeah.
and I didn't have the tools. And so we want to help you prevent those big threats and traps that we all get into. And so that's why we created Founders Fuel. It's the fuel that's not fuel like rocket fuel. We're not going to give you wings like Red Bull. We're going to give you it's like AI for your brain. We're just going to give you a teammate and somebody who can help you think better and think clear and do less stupid things in your
Yeah.
in your business.
Well, one of the things that it's funny because when we created Founders Fuel, we did it backwards than any other product that I'm aware of was ever like really created. I mean, there's a few obviously that are out there, but we decided that this was ultimately going to be a formulation that for me initially, right? So there was no thought on expense. In other words, like we weren't saying, okay, where can we source the cheapest kratom? Where can we source the cheapest kava? And, can we have it manufactured out in China and all that other jazz? Instead, you are really, really, really like dead set on we have to have the highest quality ingredients through each stage of that process. And then the manufacturing, like we're literally the only ones in the world that can do what we do because the manufacturing process is patented. The formula, we have the exclusive right on this formula, so nobody else in the world can do what we do. But even the manufacturing process is absurdly expensive. But throughout that entire process, like it was never designed to go mass market. It was always sort of designed for, what can we do to make Charlie superhuman, right?
Right.
And then as we did this, then it was like, well, wait a minute, this is really cool. And when you do things really cool, you want to share with other people, right? So like you said, you started sharing and more people started to feel this way. And then it was like, hey, I think we might actually have a business out of this. And this isn't our primary business. It's one of those things like, you know what, if this works out well, this is going to be awesome. But if it doesn't work out well, it's still win-win either way. We'll just have a few thousand bottles that we can use eternally,
Well,
right?
just yeah, that was the risk that Charlie and I realized, and our other partners is like, well, at the end of the day, we'll just use it ourselves because our profit margins aren't great. I mean, if you look at what other supplement companies are putting out there, but we're like, we want something that we're proud of, that we can stand behind, and we want something it's unlike anything that's available. And so, we're willing to take on the risk because the product's so good. We'll just use it ourselves and share it with our friends.
Yeah, exactly. And it was funny because the moment we decided, all right, let's make this into a real product, several of the people that, you and I very accomplished entrepreneurs, like right away, they're giving us some feedback. Hey, let's get this manufactured in China and you can do this and that. But it was like, you know what? At the end of the day, this is still for us. And
Yeah.
so it has to be the highest quality. And worst comes to worst, it doesn't sell a whole bunch. We have a few thousand bottles, but at least we know that, we have created the best product of its kind on the market.
Yeah.
And so, whatever happens ends up happening with that. But, they originally, you gave me a competitor's product, and we won't mention their name, but you gave me a competitor's product, and you're like, well, go ahead and try this. And I really, really liked it. It was really, really good. It was far less expensive than the one that we have right now, except there was a problem. So it felt really good, but then the crash at the end was
Down. Yep.
hard. And so it felt really, really good, but then it crashed hard. And so then it ended up requiring me to take more of that product in order to sustain it throughout my day because I would come up and then slam and then come up and then slam.
Yep.
And so that wasn't sustainable long term. And so we knew that if you could just like a plane kind of bring it up and then kind of bring it nice and down, like that would be the ideal scenario. And that's where we were able to come up with a better formulation. And I'm incredibly proud of it. And it's one of the, here's a perfect example of why we were reassured that we were onto something. So we brought in three other partners. One of the first person that I brought in, I said, hey, I want you to taste this, Joe, right? I want you to taste this, see what you think. And Joe was like, dude, you don't have to pay me to be involved with this. And I go, what do you mean? He goes, I just want equity. Like this is huge. This is unbelievable. I'm like, oh, well, that's pretty cool. And then, Cade was another one, right? Cade
Yep.
was like, hey, what do you think? Cade's like, oh, I'm all in, like hardcore, same thing. You guys don't have to pay me. I want equity. And then, Duran, when we brought in our web guy, Duran right off the bat was like, and we didn't ask people, hey, do you want equity or do you want to get paid? Like every situation,
Right.
they were like, hey, this is crazy. Duran was the one that was like, I got more done in 4 hours than what would previously taking me tons of time to do. And he's like,
Yeah.
I don't know what this stuff is, but I want equity. And that was because like I wanted people to sample it before they got involved so they can get fully bought in on the mission. And when the core people in the company tried it and then were so just bought in, that's when it's like, you know what? This isn't an accident. There's something really here. And anybody else who's tried it, they're just like, oh, it's been really life changing. So, it's been fun, man. It's also if you told me how hard this was going to be when we got started, I never would have started this ever.
I know we could have just sourced our own and like just kind of kept going along our merry way, but I think we just dug in and we realized like this is not just for us anymore. Like we have to do this as a service to the entrepreneurial world and just to people who want to feel better in life. I mean, because That's the thing is indigenous people, they use plants to feel better. I mean, if you
Yeah.
think of, hard labor all day in the fields, and, you're picking fruit, you're building houses, whatever people are doing, the physical body starts breaking down. And there's a really good book called The Balanced Brain. And The Balanced Brain is a book about Founder's Fuel. I mean, literally
Really?
how the brain works. And it's a newer book, and Christina Nord is the neuroscientist who wrote it. But one of the things that our brains are looking for is it's not the pleasure that rewards the brain where you get that little bit of endorphin that gets released, because that's really why we're using the kratom, is because we want to get that the endorphins out so we don't feel like we're always running behind.
Yeah.
And so one of the things she found in people who had mental illnesses, they lost the ability to access pleasure in their brains. And
Hmm.
so that's what I've noticed with entrepreneurs is we are insanely good at suffering. And we actually think it's a badge of honor to just go through the trials and just work harder and work longer. No one else is willing to take on the risks we are. That means no one else is willing to sacrifice. And when I looked at the way that our brains function, it's like we don't have to sacrifice in order to be successful. In fact, it's the opposite. You ended up in the hospital because of this, but that lesson, frankly, like you didn't learn your lesson yet. Like it was still, you could repeat this if we're not careful. And so that's where I'm like, man, how many other entrepreneurs are there out there like Charlie? And I look at my patient load and I'm like, yes, so many of them. So Kratom, what it does is it reactivates and stimulates those little endorphin receptors so that you can feel good. You can feel like you're pursuing
Yeah.
pleasure. You get out of that mental disease where you think suffering is the pathway. And it's actually not achieving what she found in her research is it's just the stimulation of getting there. And in fact, in one of the studies, they had these mice and they put probes on the brain, and they found that if the mice just hit the right sensor, the probes would just stimulate the release of a little bit of endorphin, and they would just push it all day. They would go without water, without food, without anything, just to have that. They installed it in humans. This was in the 1950s, so we can't repeat the experiment. But they took one offender who was like, he had marijuana. He was possessing marijuana in the 50s. And so he's like in jail forever. And now it's everywhere. You can't get rid of this stuff. But
Yeah.
what they found is, he just by being able to push that stimulation, he just felt so good. And so, that's the thing is if you can get a little bit of endorphin release, you're going to be, it's a stimulation and it feels good. It keeps you focused. If you do it too much, though, it sedates you. And that's where the crash occurred, is because it's like, I need more, I need more, I need more. I'm going to keep pushing the button. But that's where we put in kava, because kava is a neurotrain. And what it does is it allows GABA to kick in. And so in this book, The Balanced Brain, what she found is that our brain has expectations, and when the expectations aren't met, then we can have a negative bias or a positive bias if the expectations are met. And so
Mhm.
when you have a little bit of endorphins, and then you have a little bit of kava. Kava is like when the expectations get met. So it's like,
Mhm.
okay, I had a lot of variables today, but my expectations was met. We accomplished this, this, and this, instead of we didn't accomplish these three things that day. Because who accomplishes everything in the day that they set out for? I mean,
Right.
you better than anybody else, but that's it. Like the rest of us are like,
Oh,
okay,
I don't trust me. I accomplished very little of everything that I want to do every day. But yeah, no, I get it.
that
But I do
makes
a lot more, because of Founders Fuel.
and
And
that's what I'm saying is when you combine these agents, now you're working on just a little bit of that pleasure pathway. You're feeling good about the work you're doing, but we're not overexpressing it. It's a microdose and it's fermented. It's a liposomal nanoized version. So it's very easy on the brain. And then the kava helps create that expectation center. And then with the L-theanine, what that does is it prevents the brain from getting tired to the place where you think you need more.
yeah,
And that's what happens when you drink coffee. If you add L-theanine, the adenosine receptors, instead of them getting fully expressed, they don't. They mellow out. And so your brain has this nice, even energy all throughout the day. And then we put in the lion's mane so that the lion's mane helps express BDNF so that you have better learning and better neuroplasticity. And
Mhm.
and that's what the neuroscience all shows is the lion's mane really keeps you in that curious mode.
Yeah.
And the curiosity is what helps your brain evolve and change, even when we know that there's a lot on the line. So I mean, from a neuro perspective, it's just a very good formula that anybody can use without running the risk of having the dependency or the
Sure.
drop offs. Make sure you talk to your physician about this, by the way, folks, if you do get Founders Fuel, but also be smart and use it as prescribed.
Yeah. And, I also want to make sure that people understand that this isn't, one of those not get rich quick, but or I should say shiny penny or easy button or whatever it is type of things, right? Because it's a lot more than just founder's fuel. If you've got bad habits, like if you have bad habits, just don't take founder's fuel. Like, because
Get healthy first. Yes.
yeah, it's one of those things that it's like there's there's a lot of things that go into creating an excellent outcome. If you're baking a cake and you're like, I'm gonna skip the sugar and I'm gonna just, focus on something else, the cake's never gonna come out the same way. I'm talking to you and I'm using cake as an example, probably a really bad metaphor.
No, it's
But
okay. I love cake too.
oh, there you go.
I'm a
But
human.
the same thing, it's like, if you want to build a cake, you got to have all the right ingredients and in the sequence of the way you need to do it. If you add sugar at the very end, like this cake's still not going to come out the same way. So with Founders Fuel, it's like you have to understand that there's a giant protocol that goes into it if you want to become, quote unquote, superhuman. Obviously, that's just a fun phrase that we use. But if you want to be able to really focus real well, and that's going to start with, having a really, really great quality of sleep. And so you really have a great quality of sleep. You get up in the morning, you hydrate. If you don't hydrate, like you're gonna have other issues, right? You have to hydrate. Certain nutrition that goes beyond this, making sure you have a clean diet. If your diet is full of sugar and complex carbs, like you're not going to be able to focus the same level that you should focus, but having a good, clean diet. Magnesium has been really helpful to just also support the brain. And then, sunlight is also really important. I notice that, the days that maybe are overcast and I don't have, there's rainy or whatnot, don't have a lot of sunlight. There's a difference in my ability to focus as when there is sunlight, I'm able to absorb more of that in the morning. Um, there is, exercise is also real important. Somebody used this example earlier. They go, if you ever looked at a pond that had still water, you'll notice it gets green and murky and thick and nasty looking. But when the water starts moving, it cleans up the water and, it's better. And the same thing with exercise. You get that heart pumping and whatnot, starts to clean out the water in the brain. And you did a podcast recently, on sleep and how that helps to just clean out the brain and sleep. So it's like there's so many different factors in it. I don't want our listeners, the last thing I do, like I said, Founders Fuel is one of those things that, we built to give an edge and we built it for ourselves to create an enormous edge. But this isn't our primary business. So I'm not going to be the guy that's sitting here trying to pitch you and sell you and say, buy this, buy this, buy this. And instead it's like, this is going to help you develop an edge, but it's to develop an edge as long as you understand the protocol that goes along with creating a healthy mind and healthy body.
Yeah.
It's not, you just don't take it and assume all your wishes are going to come true. Like you got to be able to pay attention to some of those other things as well, Um, but when you do have that dialed in, and then when you put Founders Fuel inside of that routine, whew, it will change people's lives in the way that they work unlike anything else they've ever had. And what I've done, the level of investment that I've made and every other nootropic and botanical and whatnot, just trying all these different things. There's hardly a product that I feel like I haven't tried. Um, and some works better than others, right? But that's why we still needed to create something better.
Man,
And yeah, that's where we are now.
couldn't agree more. Yeah, I think that's a really good place to wrap up because it does you feel better when you use it after you've worked out hard that morning. It's best to use it between about 10 and 2 p.m. But it needs to be after a workout, after you've eaten great, you've had a good night's sleep. If you haven't hit all of those things, then just don't take it. And
Yeah.
so, that's kind of the final point that I'll land on. But for those of you who want to dive in, you can go to foundersfuel.co and sign up for our wait list. We're we're out right now, but we will have it again very soon. Charlie, any other place they can find us? Instagram.
Yeah, Get Founders Fuel is our Instagram handle, Get Founders Fuel. And again, foundersfuel.co, and they can follow along our journey. And we're building in public, so we're telling people like some of the lessons that we've learned throughout building this business, how we've overcome some of this, and we're working with other founders and executives and whatnot. So we just bring the community together and share what's working, what's not, and I hope we're able to help a few people, change a few lives, and then all have fun while we're at it.
Love that. Well, thanks so much for taking the time today. And everybody, if you love this show, make sure you share it with your friends, family, and loved ones. And let us know what you think of Founders Fuel. We're excited about it.
Awesome.
Take
Very
care.
good.